premises amount exceeded 21,000 feet. Taken by a civilian pilot. The object potentially is anywhere between 600 to 1,000 feet. I cannot vouch for the veracity of this photograph. I just received permission today to share this with you.
Every special access program has a counterintelligence officer. That's their job. You know, it's their job. There's a source of forged documents right there. Go back through the UFO history, and you'll see fingers pointing to others.
Guess what? Congress has no idea that this is happening on a regular basis. That's a problem.
I'm not even there. There I am. What you guys just watched was Red Panda Koala's a presentation that he had put together. I'm going to play some other clips as well from the yeah, here's a good one. Let's
and it just so happens that in 2008 I was asked to apply those same skill sets into the UFO community. Left the Department of Defense, ironically enough, to finish the very mission they gave me in the first place. I didn't ask for it. I'm not a UFO guy. I'm not a ufologist. I never have been. I never will be. I'm a counterterrorism and counterespionage guy. I do counterintelligence, counterinsurgencies. That's what I do. And it just so happens that in 2008, I was asked to apply those same skill sets into the UFO community. Left the Department of Defense, ironically enough, to finish the very...
So this guy was hired to apply military counterintelligence skill sets to the UFO topic and UFO community. Wow. Would you look at that, huh?
They have the government report on that. If you in Montana, the UFOs came in and they interfered with our nuclear weapons, and they brought the entire Echo flight offline. Which, by the way, I have the government report on that if you want it. Here's the actual report from the Department of Defense. This is the actual intelligence report that was released.
No, it isn't. Ooh, that's a problem.
In Montana, the UFOs came in and they interfered with our nuclear weapons, and they brought the entire Echo flight offline. Which, by the way, I have the government report on that if you want it. Here's the actual report. The UFOs came in and they interfered with our nuclear weapons.
No, Lou, they didn't. They didn't really. But nice try. Anyways, lots of news happening in counterintelligence. The top witness in the Jeffrey Epstein, Ghislaine Maxwell case, the one that slept with Prince Andrew, royalty, British family, Virginia Giuffre, Virginia Giuffre, committed suicide after, telling her mom that she cares about her kids more than anything in this world and she would never commit suicide. Some cell phone wizards tracked down 2 cell phones that were suspicious within 5 minutes walking distance from her house that were used the day of her apparent suicide. But it looks like once again, the community in the intelligence community is moving ahead of operations and getting rid of witnesses in these deep state cases. And the same thing is going on with Lai Elizondo and his recent antics at the congressional hearings the other day, last week, right? So quite amazing stuff. Then we got, tons of stuff coming out about 9/11. Tucker Carlson doing a 3-part series on it. Jason Burmis, the creator of Loose Change, still just, was on my podcast a couple weeks ago, sharing some new research and evidence that's come out in the 9/11 case. We're close to tagging these deep state crooks down and getting them arrested. And Lou Elizondo is an interesting guy. Lou Elizondo is very unique because his father was Bay of Pigs. Like that connects his father to the whole group that did JFK, like the secret Bay of Pigs CIA operation that was going to assassinate Castro. They had this whole team called Alpha 66, right? Back in the day, the Alpha 66, and then Alpha 66 under Operation Mongoose turned into this group called Interpen, right? And Interpen, as we know, Interpen was run by this guy, Jerry Hemming. Why is this not working? Oh, okay. Interpen. Okay. And my computer is acting absolutely bonkers right now, not letting me type in anything. Yes, the Intercontinental Penetration Force, you'll find if you look up this group. And it was run by this guy, Jerry Hemming, who's a very, interesting guy. Jerry Hemming looks an awful lot like one of the tramps in the in Dealey Plaza that day. He looks an awful lot like that tall tramp who was in Dealey Plaza that day. On the day JFK was killed, November 22nd, 1963. And Jerry Hemming was head of that assassinations group that, came out of the CIA Operation Mongoose people, and later were just a private organization, like a private hit team with mafia connections in it and the like, that were operating down in the swamps of the Everglades in Florida, brought to New Orleans, and then brought to Dallas for the assassination hit team in Dallas. And these were all like former Bay of Pigs operatives and a lot of Cuban guys, Cuban refugees that were, kicked out of Cuba because they were, working with the CIA at the JM Wave station down in Miami that employed hundreds of thousands of, I think it was over, 1,000 agents at one point in time during the peak of this Havana station, the Havana station. And these guys are the ones that murdered President Kennedy. It's all coming out in these JFK files and stuff. This Interpen group, which includes Jerry Hemming and Roy Hargraves. Roy Hargraves is another one of the tramps in some people's minds, and also potentially the Umbrella Man from the JFK assassination. He worked closely with Felipe Vidal Santiago, who is the radio man next to Umbrella Man in the JFK in the assassination. They stand right there in the kill zone with nobody else around, right behind the Stemmons Freeway signs, like right here, and they can be seen in the Zapruder film. This guy with his hand up waving to JFK, and this guy standing up with the umbrella, and they sit down immediately on the grass calmly after the assassination. While everyone gets up and starts running around and going places, these two guys sit down when they were just standing up, which is super suspicious. Again, these guys are the ones that most researchers agree were in Dealey Plaza that day. The assassination hit team, the actual hired guns, the core assassins, the mechanics of the assassination, you will. But it was the CIA and the Central Intelligence Agency that had the power to rig the press, rig the media, and put counterintelligence operations out there to really push the Oswald narrative full force and viciously attack anyone who questioned that narrative or talked out against the narrative. So this whole counterintelligence groups being leveraged against members of the community trying to get the truth is nothing new. We've seen this in the history of JFK before with Lou's father, who worked directly with these guys for CIA in Operation Zapata, the Bay of Pigs invasion. And so just like George H.W. Bush was brought in to the JFK assassination to head the CIA in 1976, just in time for the House Select Committee on Assassinations were reinvestigating the Kennedy murders. They put a counterintelligence guy in with direct background to some of these deep state crimes of the past. This guy's they put in charge of the CIA during that time. Supposedly, they wanted someone with no prior connections to the CIA to come in and clean up the CIA and get to the bottom of this Kennedy business. And this is the guy that they put in 76. And of course, he's deeply connected to this whole deep state mechanics and all these people. So people don't know that, but it comes out and later on. But this is where we are with the UFO file right now, and this is why it is absolutely key that we all coordinate together to take down this this king linchpin that they have dangled and selected and put out right in front of us. Deep state, Bay of Pigs father, CIA. He gets his military career working down in Guantanamo in Cuba, torturing prisoners for the 9/11 program. Again, the 9/11 inside job and what we know about that's coming out through Tucker Carlson and Kurt Weldon finally 11 years after he should have covered this and gone into it. It's finally coming out, and it's all deeply connected to this core group of counterintelligence guys that came right from the JFK assassination. The people that should have been arrested and rounded up had the government done its appropriate, and the Justice Department done the appropriate measures and work back in 76, and from 63 to 76, they could have rounded up all these guys and put them away for life. And then Lou Elizondo's father would have never had an evil son to carry out, just atrocities for the deep state, and then also learn all these counterintelligence, military grade psychological weapons that he then turned on the UFO community, and people like me from this community. And I have a whole bunch of people that we've invited here tonight to join us, and I don't know where any of those people are, but I'm going to see. I'm going to let them know right now. So we'll get some other friends on here to talk about all this stuff. But yeah, what, another clickbait waste of time? Yeah, there's lots of evidence here. We're going to present tons of evidence, and we got tons of people coming on here to talk about all this. But Lou Elizondo, yeah, he showed a photo at this recent conference, which was just unbelievable, right? So the way I look at this is you have a quote by Ian Fleming that I like to use about once is coincidence, right? Twice is happenstance, and 3 times is enemy action. So when Lou and TTSA got up there the first time, the very first time we saw anything from these guys, they get up there on a show on the TTSA stage, and they put out this this was from the TTSA original press conference with this party balloon UFO. This is apparently, these guys are the Pentagon top people, and this is the best UFO photo and evidence that they have that they present is this debunked party balloon. That's number one, that we've seen this before. And then number two, he tells a paid audience that this chandelier reflection in the window was a UFO, and that pilots chased it, and that it was over Romania, and people have debunked all of that very quickly. And then now, when he gets the chance in front of congressional hearings to bring UFO evidence and show people real stuff, this is what he brings up and presents. So you have that type of action 3 times. That's enemy action. It can't be anything but. It can't be a mistake. And there's people like saying, "Oh, we need to forgive Lou, and say that this is just an innocent mistake. Anyone could have gotten mixed up. He probably got a pilot that gave him disinformation. He's probably got thousands of pilots and thousands of people sending him UFO photos and information. And heck, if he sat in the chair of the head of the UFO program for that many years, he's got to have, so many people. He's got to have access to way better photographs and videos than this. But this is the best that he can come up with and pull out of his whole entire repertoire, being the head of all these programs and the go-to guy for UFO knowledge and information. And then they get losers that show up in my chat and tell people, oh, this guy doesn't have evidence and no evidence shown. So dude, I'm doing nothing but show real evidence. And you have these people in here just, talking absolute just total shit. I hope that the Jesse Michaels video drops soon. That would be great, because yeah, it's just great because this guy has put himself in the position to be like the go-to person for information, and he's lied to people and just buried so much truth and so much real information. And this is the bullshit that he puts out there to the public. So he's probably had thousands of pilots that have come to him with UFO information, and what's happened to those? Why aren't those pilots' testimony or information getting presented by Congress? Why does he make up a story about a fake pilot, show a fake UFO photo, and just basically discredit all of ufology? I mean, you have Michael Shermer and Mick West out here saying that, all ufologists are discredited and they're all full of shit. This is the best of what they have, and they have nothing, and they're all full of crap. And it's all Lou's fault. You're an idiot now because of Lou. I mean, how does people feel about that this guy with a counterintelligence operate, it is highly illegal to run these kind of operations against the American people. These operations are highly illegal. And yet here we are with a guy, Lou Elizondo, whose father is deep state, connected to 9/11, coming into the UFO file to spread absolute disinformation and throw red herrings and every counterintelligence espionage trick in the book has been played on the community by this guy. And you still have these guys. I got in a 2-hour debate with this guy, Darren, Reverend Darren, who's a big Elizondo troll on the internet, tried to come in and debate us on a Twitter space earlier, and got his ass absolutely handed to him. I thought it was great. And yeah, these guys need to go to prison, and we need to mobilize Kash Patel. If Kash Patel ever had an opportunity to show us that he is serious about taking down the deep state and really taking actions, we need an arrest, and we need a perp walk in order to gain any. These guys have no credibility. Pam Bondi just said they have no release date for the Epstein files. First, people got an empty folder and a photo op with all these social media people that they brought out and gave empty folders to for some photo op. And they said they were going to release these files, but they have to redact certain information, which takes, about a day of work. Realistically, when you have people getting paid as much as the government does, it takes about a day of work to redact all those names, social security numbers, and personal information from the Epstein files, and just release the fucking files to the American people, you stupid bitch. And she has not done that, not done any of that. They're going after, starting this whole big controversy with MS-13 gang members that, all these Democrats are like, oh my God, we need to free the gang members. And not a single Democrat took a trip down to help victims of the hurricane or the floods or any of these things, but they're literally flying down to El Salvador to try to free this gang member rapist from prison and bring him back to the U.S. And this is the media circus that has come up around disclosure in our government. It is a fucking fantastic lie. And all these people look like goddamn incompetent assholes, and probably part of the deep state just bought out as soon as they got in there. There's accusations going against RFK. I don't think that's true. I think these guys are hard at work trying to really track this stuff down. But Cash, we need to send the message to Kash Patel tomorrow, and that's why I organized this stream. I want to put together a big phone home. I got a whole bunch of people joining me tonight. They're going to be popping in and out of this stream. First, we got Manny 503 of Area 503 on. What's up, Manny? Manny produced a excellent film called Who is Lou? Because a lot of people, we don't know who Lou Elizondo really is. And the background that we do know is extremely eye-opening to a lot of people who have looked into that. But the Who is Lou um, documentary is available online. Oh, it's really hard to find though. They've buried this in the search algorithms, huh?
Jeremy, if you go to who'sloumovie.com, it's all right there with the documents.
Who is Lou movie?
Just who's Lou, WHOS.
Okay, Who's Lou?
Mm-hmm.
There, that will help people find it. There we go. Who's Lou? This on IMDb.
Yeah, it's that's the link to it on IMDb, but it's on the website. It should be on the. I've got it shared if you want to pop up in my screen here.
Yeah. Why don't you drop a link in the private chat? I'll go ahead and share it for the audience. But yeah, the deep dive into Lou that you did was really eye-opening and revealing for me in a lot of ways. Especially those 9/11 and Bay of Pitt, the JFK and 9/11 connections were just hit it so home for me because I've done so much research into JFK and 9/11, and to find this guy that bridges both these topics and then comes right into the UFO field, it's like the gods gave us this golden ticket to unraveling all this bullshit. If we can just convince Kash Patel and our like the people at the FBI to go after this Lou Elizondo guy and take him down, I guarantee you, with the stuff that we've talked about with this hate group, that people basically Lou has these attack dogs working for him, and that he's sicked these people in the community to go after people. That is an organized, harassment operation.
Mm-hmm.
And if there's evidence that in his cell phone records or anything, I'm sure he's probably busy deleting everything tonight after the streams that we did today. I guarantee you his people he had one of his people in there trying to attack us and take us down. And I guarantee you that he knows about this. And I bet you he's going to be a very sleepless night tonight for Lou after of hiding, burning information, destroying cell phones and other records that he's got. Because bro, the hammer is coming down. I really hope you know that. Like I want to call the FBI tomorrow and report this, because what he's doing, applying military scale tactics to domestic targets, is just it violates conventions and codes. Talk about the RICO Act, RICO charges, class action lawsuit that we could file. I mean, potentially people like channels like mine, right, which had hundreds of thousands of I was stuck at 99,000 subscribers during this whole debacle in 2017. And finally in 2020, I think is when I went on, 2020 was during the pandemic. Yeah. I went down to Tim Pool, and I finally got on a big podcast that was like 50,000 people watching, and they couldn't throttle my channel anymore. And I got above 100,000 subscribers. And so if you look at the amount of work that's been done by these intelligence agencies behind the scene to basically shun people that were speaking the truth and promote channels that were not out, that would just blindly platform Lou and not ask him any questions, those channels got boosted. Those interviews got boosted. Not all those channels did get boosted. There were some of those people like said, "Oh, I had a good channel and I interviewed Lou early on and I didn't get like boosted." And yeah, but like that's because they knew like who to boost. They knew who to put in this select group of
and during that time too, Jeremy, he was doing like 3 to 5 podcasts a week too. So not everyone was just going to take off and get to a million subscribers overnight just because they had Lou on there.
Right.
But there's no denying that there is a large segment of these people who showed up in the last 6 or 7 years who did nothing but perpetuate the same stories and claims that Elizondo and his camp were putting out, and they would echo each other to create this large vocal minority of people telling the same stories, and thereby self-corroborating each other, and they got rewarded for it. There's people who are 50, 60, 70, 80, 90, 100,000 subscribers, like people like that Matt Ford who before he got into the UFO thing was like a failed political commentary guy. Like the guy couldn't even make a successful channel trashing on Donald Trump when like everybody was trashing on Donald Trump and getting views out of it. You know what I mean? Like, yeah, that guy right there, like he had that standforbetter.org where he was making all these weird, like amateur, like political commercials that were all anti-Trump. And then he got into the UFO thing and hooked up with Lou Elizondo, and now he's got a little bit of notoriety. Yeah, he's like a lighting guy for like in Hollywood. He did like lighting on a couple of TV shows or something. So that's why he's got an IMDb. But that guy's a freaking weirdo, man. Like he is just, I don't even know what to say about him. But
yeah,
it's a good example of that, of people just taking on their mantle and getting a rise to fame.
I've reached out to Matt to like be like, dude, try to get me on the show, like to talk about some real stuff, and there's been absolute silence back from him and his team. I did get reach out to the Tedesco brothers and talk to them at one point because they're like into science and sensors and a lot of that stuff. So we had a interesting talk, but yeah, I don't know what's going on with some of these guys. Matt Ford just tied his entire career to Lou Elizondo, and now it's irreversible. He can't back out now, so he's got like a
no. And then he even serves on the UAP Disclosure Fund with Elizondo. He won himself a spot as an advisor or something on the UAPDF. So he's there. He's been rewarded.
Yeah. Yeah, a lot of these guys have they're brought into this group and given a lot of them are given promises that they're going to be part, like the TTSA investors, and that whole thing is you invested money in that and you were going to get stock in this company once the disclosure tech came out, and you're going to make millions off of UFO technology once it hit the public domain. And a lot of people fell for that scam. I warned a lot of people about that. It started my own, the Hubbard brothers with Ken Griggs back then, just to show people that we have real information. You want to invest in something, you might actually get something back. You might want to invest in us and the work that we're doing, which I thought was interesting because Mick West earlier today made a comment about how ridiculous the UFO topic is and how no one takes it seriously, like saying that the Manhattan Project was this clear response to an imminent danger of the Nazis getting nukes before us, and the research response was justified by the intelligence and basic science. And he says UAPs do not have this evidentiary basis for a massive research investment, and that's completely false, because I've personally hooked up investors with UAP people, and in our all propulsion group, when we hold the open mics at some of those, I looked up some of the names that are in there. I'm connected with a lot of them on LinkedIn. There's big money people in those. That big money people came to our events to hear real engineers and scientists talk about the real stuff,
right?
And so I don't think Elizondo runs his disinformation program, and these shills use it as an example to say how all of us are friggin' this retarded. Right. They completely ignore the scientists and the engineers that are actually doing the research into this stuff and getting millions of dollars in funding. I've seen tens of millions of dollars in funding pass through different companies in people's hands, going after this technology over the decades. So to come out and say that nobody's taking this seriously, that DARPA didn't have give a $1 million project to Mike McCulloch and the Roger Scheuer for the M Drive stuff, or to say that doesn't happen is just an ignorance of the actual science and the actual stuff that's going on in that sphere. So I thought that was rather humorous, but also disheartening, because you have Mick out there just lying, saying false information, and then using these you get guys that are using these counterintelligence agents as like a straw man to just beat the shit out of the UFO community and say, look at these guys, they're all idiots, and they're all morons. And meanwhile, they won't touch the real stuff. They won't touch the real files and stuff, and or real UFO researchers like yourself. So I think this is telling, though, because if you ask Grok, right, I had asked Grok some questions about Lou Elizondo, and I was hoping that Tupa would come on, because Tupa had some great stuff that he was talking about earlier. He had asked Grok and come up with Grok basically spit out all this stuff about, these executive orders and other legal terms that, Lou is probably violating. And that the whole thing from Grok's perspective is that what Lou Elizondo is doing is a sophisticated disinformation campaign, a disinformation plot that involves military grade tactics being used against the UFO community. And that is illegal. And I guarantee you, if we get enough people calling the FBI and making a stink about this, that they might actually move, because they have enough evidence right now, just based on the testimony that I heard in today's super chat, that they could go out and get a warrant I've seen them get warrants and go and raid people's homes for far less than this.
Oh, sure. Yeah.
And,
that reminds me of a story that Elizondo told once, where he got a phone call in the middle of the night that the FBI was on their way to his house, right? And this is words out of his mouth, that the FBI was on the way to his house. And his answer to that was not to go sit on the doorstep and wait for them and say, "Hey guys, how can I help you? I'm not doing anything wrong. I have nothing to hide." His answer was to take a bunch of documents that he had at his home, go over to his neighbor's house and hide him in the barbecue in his backyard in the middle of the night. So his answer, when he thinks that he's under investigation, is admittedly to obstruct justice and hide what he believes they're looking for. He admits that his first initial gut instinct is to commit the crime of obstruction of justice and to hide evidence so that he can go and lie about it when they show up and be like, "I don't know what you're talking about." Your mic's muted, Jeremy, if you're saying something there. But I think that's interesting. And that right there speaks to his mindset of how he's willing to commit crimes to cover up his actions, and that he knows he's doing something wrong if he's willing to commit a crime. If I got to call the FBI was on the way to my house, I'd just sit at the door and wait for him and be like, "What do y'all want?" Like, let me see your warrant, and let's, what do you want? I've got nothing to hide. You know what I mean? Like, it's crazy. It's crazy that his initial instinct, and that he just openly admits to it, is to obstruct justice and hide documents in his neighbor's barbecue. And I've used the term RICO for a while now with these people. I think that the RICO standard is a good one to. I think the RICO case. I think there is a case here, because Racketeer Influenced and Corrupt Organization Act shows that if there's a corrupt organization, conspiracy, a group of people that are trying to further an agenda and they're acting together, that's exactly what RICO is for. And it seems like when you start adding in people like Chris Mellon and Gary Nolan and this whole UAPDF and the lobbying aspect of this and all this, there's obviously a group of people that are acting together towards us. Then the question is, do they know that they're breaking the law? Are they actually trying to actively grift people, or what's their agenda? It's not any form of truth disclosure. It's like it seems like it's like about illegal lobbying and manipulating Congress to get $1 billion to study UAPs sent to this UAPDF. I don't know what their agenda is. I like your hat, by the way, Jeremy. It's very Gandalf, man. You need like a freaking pipe and a beard to go with it.
Cool. I got it in Salem here in Mass.
Oh, nice.
Witch City. But it looks like a wizard hat or a witch hat. But yeah, let's. Do you want to play do you have a clip or a video, a movie we could play?
I can play the thing here.
Let me put it on my screen so I get the.
Yeah, you might have to do that so you can get the audio.
Let me get the audio up. Who's Lou movie?
That's just an embedded YouTube link too. It's on YouTube. It's on Odyssey. People can go watch it for free. And I've had a lot of people ask me the last couple of weeks if I'm going to do a follow up to it. And because of technical reasons, I can't really re-edit the old version. I've upgraded my computer, my software, and my hardware since then, so it's not really feasible to go in and re-edit it. But I do have all the original source material, so I might make a follow up and add in all the new stuff, like the CGI TR3B that he used at his first speaking convention, that black triangle.
Okay.
And some of this other stuff. What's up?
I'm going to play this movie and let it roll for a little bit. I got to take care of a couple things, and I'm going to jump back on with you, and we're going to analyze all this stuff and go over it. So
cool.
Whoop.
have tackled many strange stories on 60 Minutes, but perhaps none like this.
Here to discuss, Luis Elizondo, former director of the Pentagon's Advanced Aerospace Threat Identification Program.
UFOs have captivated the public interest for decades, but they've always been dismissed, including by me, as the province of wackos.
Luis Elizondo is a former military intelligence official and currently works with the Stars Academy and the History Channel, and he joins us now.
My name is Lou Elizondo. For nearly the last decade, I ran a sensitive aerospace threat identification program. It was in this position I learned that the phenomena is indeed real.
And somehow managed to leapfrog
And now, as
us,
a member of
or
To the
in
Stars
something
Academy,
completely
None of them have
independent.
obvious
And I think it's
explanations. These are
important.
aircraft, apparently, that are moving in ways that appear to violate physics, that are flying very differently from any aircraft ever
That
observed,
demonstrates
and
that the U.S.
way
government has
faster than
actually
any
indeed been
plane
dealing with this
we
issue
know
for over
has.
70 years.
What is this?
And that's a little
Well,
bit
we don't know,
problematic,
for some
because if we
reason,
say this is foreign adversarial technology, we know that the Russians
On October 14th, 2017, Luis Lou Daniel Elizondo IV stepped on stage in Seattle, Washington, announcing to the world that the UFO phenomenon was real.
It was in this position I learned that the phenomena is indeed real.
Lou would instantly rise to the top of the UFO subculture, being backed by a global media campaign labeling him as a Pentagon UFO whistleblower. Previous to this day, no one outside of the military intelligence community, a few politicians, and a close-knit circle of defense industry contractors had ever heard of the name Lou Elizondo. Very little is known about Mr. Elizondo beyond the biography that is listed on his website at louiselizondoofficial.com. There remain to this day some very serious and alarming unanswered questions about Lou, his background, and his claims. Every piece of evidence obtained in the making of this documentary was located during a thorough search of public records available on the internet. While such information is considered public, I have gone to great lengths to protect the privacy of every individual mentioned in this piece, while only including information that is entirely relevant in an attempt to answer the question of, who's Lou? In order to be completely transparent, a full bibliography of original copies of the research material obtained during the making of this film, along with source reference links, is being made publicly available on the website www.who'sloumovie.com. Who's Lou?
Hello, I'm Tom DeLong, and thanks for joining us live today. So I want you to all meet Lou Elizondo.
Well, thanks, Tom, for that very special introduction. My name is Lou Elizondo, and as a career intelligence officer, I am accustomed to being involved in close-hold, nuanced programs involving national security. This includes being a counterintelligence special agent, a case officer, and an intelligence practitioner. However, by far the most interesting effort I was involved with was the topic of advanced aerial threats. For nearly the last decade, I ran a sensitive aerospace threat identification program focusing on unidentified aerial technologies. It was in this position I learned that the phenomena is indeed real.
Navigating to LuisElizondoOfficial.com. Lou Elizondo, former senior intelligence official, disclosure advocate, national security expert, former director of the Pentagon's UFO UAP program, ATIP. In 3 years, we have achieved the unimaginable together, and this is just the beginning. My mission. My mission is to challenge the status quo of the past 75 years of UFO UAP secrecy and champion its disclosure in a meaningful way that ultimately leads to a better, more comprehensive understanding of this great enigma. My approach is a deliberate and calculated effort to challenge current mindsets and policies in order to enable collaboration across all governments, people, institutions, academia, and scientific communities.
Lou plainly states that his mission is to challenge the status quo of the past 75 years of UFO and UAP secrecy. And he states, quote, "In 3 years we have achieved the unimaginable together, and this is just the beginning," end quote. However, it is unclear what, if anything, Lou has actually achieved on the topic of disclosure. Some people credit Lou with the supposed recent involvement of Congress in the UFO and UAP phenomenon.
In June, the United States government is set to release a public report on everything it knows about UFOs.
Others counter that Congress has been interested in the phenomenon for a very long time, resulting in such programs as ATIP and its predecessor OSAP in the first place, going all the way back to Project Blue Book, Sign, and Grudge in the 1940s. Some people have speculated that the mainstream media attention brought to the subject of ufology by Mr. Elizondo is a benefit for UFO disclosure, while others feel that the one-sided media attention is a detriment and is suspect, as no one truly knows who paid for it. Some people believe that Lou is truly a champion for UFO disclosure, while others believe that his actions benefit only himself and the defense industry, which stands to profit out of a partial disclosure of weapons technology. And so I must ask this question: what exactly has Lou Elizondo contributed to the disclosure process, and whose interest is he truly representing? These will be the first of many unanswered questions and contradictions that arise when we look at the public image and statements made by Mr. Elizondo and then compare them to the evidence and facts, and then we ask the question of, who's Lou?
Career intelligence officer with the United States Army, the United States Department of Defense, the United States Office of National Counterintelligence Executive, the United States Office of the Director of National Intelligence, Program Manager, Director for ATIP, Advanced Aerospace Threat Identification Program, Senior Intelligence Operations Officer, National Strategic Policy and Strategy Development, Foreign and Domestic Intelligence and Information Sharing, Intelligence and Law Enforcement Integration, supervised and conducted espionage and terrorism investigations around the globe, managed clandestine source operations throughout the Middle East and Latin America.
From the images and statements on the Luis Elizondo official webpage, you get an idea of how Lou portrays himself to the world. His image is one of a stoic soldier that has an impressive list of credentials, including the title of director of the Pentagon's UFO and UAP program called ATIP, or the Advanced Aerospace Threat Identification Program. Lou claims lofty achievements in the disclosure process, and he appears to be a champion of truth. His stated mission is to apparently force the end of UAP and UFO secrecy. However, Lou fails to mention any details of an actual plan to obtain his objective. And so while this statement sounds amazing on its surface, it makes me question if Lou actually has a plan for disclosure, or if he is simply winging it and telling us what we want to hear. But before we get into all that, let's start at the beginning. Let's go back to Lou's childhood.
I'm the son of a Cuban immigrant father who was a dissident of the Castro regime. My father spent time as a political prisoner for his involvement in the Bay of Pigs. I grew up in South Florida, and as a young man, I was often exposed to my father's efforts in helping change the political situation in Cuba.
Lou says very little about his childhood on his official webpage. He merely mentions growing up in Florida, the son of a Cuban revolutionary immigrant, and then going to the University of Miami and getting a degree. However, it appears that there is much more to Lou's early life story than is portrayed in the official narrative, and that makes perfect sense, because who can truly sum up the first 21 years of their life or so in two simple statements like, I was born here and I graduated college there? There simply has to be more to this story than we see here. In fact, Lou himself admitted as much on a pair of recent livestream appearances, making these two seemingly contradictory statements.
Yeah, that was my life. I'll tell you right now. I think, and I think with age, hopefully comes experience and maturity. At my young age, I was a pretty angry young man because of the situation my parents went through, fairly dysfunctional, unfortunately. We lost everything. And that's really in large part because of the incredible upbringing I had from my mother and my father. My mother, God bless her soul, she's no longer with us, but my father, the man, the myth, the legend, the guy who was in the Brigade 2506 and taught me how to be a human, how to make sure you give back more than you take, is right next to me. And my father, my hero, Luis Elizondo, so senior. So Pops, say hi to everybody.
Hello, everybody. I'm very happy to be here sharing this moment with my son and his friends. Your friends, now my friends. Well, it's true that I did certain things in the past. The reality is that Louis has made it come a reality. In everything that I hope I could have ever done, he has surpassed it. As a son, as a father, as a friend, as a neighbor, as a boss, as an employee, as a patriot, he is number one.
Who's Lou? Lou's father, Luis Elizondo III, has stated that he was a member of Brigade 2506, which was a part of the Bay of Pigs invasion in April of 1961. Brigade 2506 had connections to the Central Intelligence Agency and was formed by Cuban exiles that were trained by the CIA and then would later return to attack their homeland in an attempt to overthrow Fidel Castro.
I hope the members of the brigade will sit down again. This will be very... Standing over there is a Cuban Patriot 57, 159, 161. I wonder if those three could stand so that members of the brigade, members of their family, are following an historic road. One which has been followed by other Cubans in other days, and indeed by other patriots of our hemisphere in other years. Juarez, San Martin, Bolivar, O'Higgins, all of whom fought for liberty, many of whom were defeated, many of whom went in exile, and all of whom came home.
I was able to confirm that there is a Luis D. Elizondo Garcia registered on and shown on the Brigade 2506 Memorial website as a member of Compañía O, or Company O. I can only assume that this is indeed Luis Daniel Elizondo III, despite the surname of Garcia. So I think it's reasonably safe to conclude that the story of the senior Elizondo and his Bay of Pigs connections is most likely true, and that a young Lou would grow up hearing stories of his father's revolutionary days back in the fight against Castro. Lou Elizondo states on his official biography that he grew up in Florida. However, a search of public internet records revealed that Luis Daniel Elizondo IV was born in 1972 near Houston, Texas, to Luis Daniel Elizondo III and Janice Maria.
Humble. You live in Harris County, and you pay to operate it. Your county is a big operation. It's Houston, and then some.
Not much is known about the young Elizondo family during the first few years of Lou's life. However, it seems that right from the get-go, we have an inconsistency or gray area in the story of who's Lou, because Lou's official webpage omits the fact that he was born in Texas and might have spent some time there as a child. A seemingly small inconsistency for sure. However, this is just the first of many unanswered questions and contradictions that will arise when we ask, who's Lou?
Times change, but there's always one place the whole world thinks of for sunshine. For turning your face to the skies and feeling that gentle touch of warmth, where the sun says to you, lie down, my friend, and let me toast your bones till the tiredness disappears and all the abuse of winter melts away and you feel alive again. Florida.
Sometime before 1978, the Elizondo family moved to Sarasota, Florida, and it seemed like things were not going too badly for the young couple and their new son. They had put down some roots and they started a new business together. It was called Pomarola Incorporated. There is no indication of what sort of business Pomarola Incorporated actually was, but there is something peculiar about this business filing. The registered agent for the business is Luis Elizondo, and the principal place of business is on Adams Drive. However, Janice, Lou's mother, lists an address on Hidden Oak Terrace as an officer and shares that address with a young Lou who is also listed as an officer of the company at the tender age of 6. So far as I know, there is no law against people listing their minor children as co-owners on a business, and this could be entirely innocent. The mere fact alone of two parents listing a child as a co-owner on a business proves nothing. However, the types of people to employ such business tactics are normally the extremely wealthy, or at least those people that are worried about the high inheritance tax paid on generational wealth. And it appears that at this stage in their lives, the Elizondos were simply not those types of people. So this is just one of the many contradictions that arise when we ask, who's Lou? Whatever type of business Pomarola Incorporated was, it seems that it ran smoothly for a few years as they paid taxes and filed corporate filings for the years of 1981, 82, and 83. But then the business seemed to fall apart and was dissolved in 1984. That same year, Lou's parents would start another business, RPG&E Incorporated, and Lou's father would start a solo venture called Wheels International. Again, we can only speculate as to what these businesses were. However, they would both also ultimately fail and be legally dissolved in 1986 and 1987. The failed businesses must have been stressful for the young family, ultimately leading to them losing it all, as Lou put it.
At my young age, I was a pretty angry young man because of the situation my parents went through, fairly dysfunctional, unfortunately. We lost everything.
This added stress was likely a contributing factor in the decision of Lou's parents to divorce in 1987. Lou was just over 15 years old. After the divorce in late 1988, Lou's father would go on to start 2 more solo businesses within 2 days of each other, called TIL and EDL Incorporated. Both of these businesses were registered in Immokalee, Florida, and would finally afford the senior Elizondo a little bit of success, because TIL Inc. existed for 5 years and EDL Inc. lasted for nearly 16 years. These businesses will be mentioned again later, but for now, back to Sarasota, where it seems that Lou might have stayed with his mother after the breakup because he listed an address that was identical to hers when the two of them started a business together in the beginning of his senior year of high school in 1989 called Louis Devo Incorporated. Sadly, Lou's father's newfound business sense did not wear off on the junior Elizondo because Louis Devo Incorporated also failed the next year in 1990. Despite having a rocky childhood, having parents divorced during his teenage years, and a failed business attempt, Lou managed to keep his life together and graduate from Riverview High School in 1990 and then go on to the next chapter of his life. College. Who's Lou?
Later, I attended the University of Miami with double majors in microbiology and immunology and minors in chemistry. I also gained advanced research experience in parasitology and certain tropical diseases such as malaria and trypanosomiasis. My goal with these degrees was to enter the medical field. During my research experience, I was tangentially exposed to government agencies that were interested in biological research and intelligence. It was at this point I decided to pursue a career in intelligence and realized my true passion. I also decided to enlist in the U.S. Army.
Just like in his early years, there is significantly more to the story of Lou in college and his years leading into the Army than the official webpage suggests. On a recent livestream interview, Lou would describe his college years as slightly troubled as well.
Yeah, that was my life. I'll tell you right now. I think, and I think with age, hopefully comes experience and maturity. At my young age, I was a pretty angry young man. Because of the situation my parents went through, fairly dysfunctional, unfortunately. We lost everything. I was thrust into this environment where every single day it was brutal, it was merciless. And so as I got older, I learned that I wasn't very good on sports. I was, when you have you have PE time, right? And always that one last kid who's picked last. Well, that was me. I was a liability, whether it was football, baseball, basketball. I was just terrible. But the one thing I was good at was fighting, whether it was boxing and wrestling and kickboxing. And so I found myself in these environments. When I got into college, I became a bouncer. And I told myself, I actually fooled myself, telling myself, well, I'm a bouncer at night because it's the only job I can find that pays me cash and it conforms to my school schedule. But in reality, hindsight being 2020, I think I was in that situation because I wanted a chance to really go after those bullies, right? Nothing I would wait for in when I was at the club was for some big bully guy to start picking on somebody. Man, that was my favorite, man, because I was coming in, man. I would tell these guys, look, man,
throttle in their heartbeat.
I'm here every day. I get paid to fight every single day, man. And nothing's going to bring me more joy than to tune your wagon up real good.
We're doing a lot of shopping.
According to the University of Miami Registrar's Office, Lou enrolled as a student in August of 1990. Not much is known about Lou's time in college, except for this single newspaper article from Lou's sophomore year dated 1992 in the college newspaper The Miami Hurricane. The title of the article was Street Talk. What do you think about the guarded spring break parking lot? In the article, a young and philosophical Elizondo is quoted as saying, students pay quite a bit of money to go here. You would think that there would be adequate parking, but since there usually isn't, this is a good idea. However Lou would go on to spend his time, he would then continue on to receive a bachelor's degree in 1994 with a double major in microbiology and immunology and a minor in chemistry. For some reason, it appears that Lou stayed enrolled in the university for a full year after receiving his degree. I can only assume that he took some additional classes in that year. Or maybe it's because he met a girl. Because in late 1995, Lou would also meet and begin to share a mailing address with Jennifer Powers, who would someday become his wife. Over the next 2 years, they would share addresses in Miami and Hopa Sound, Florida together. Hopa Sound is up in the Palm City, Jupiter area, and it was here in Hopa Sound in 1996 when Mr. Luis Elizondo and Jennifer Powers gave birth to a healthy and beautiful baby daughter. It is also about this time that Lou joined the Army and went off for basic training. Who's Lou?
During my short tenure in the U.S. Army, I had the honor and privilege to serve in various assignments. As a counterintelligence special agent, I was assigned to the Republic of Korea, South Korea, and later throughout America's Southwest. As a young agent, I conducted counter-espionage investigations, provided technology protection of advanced aerospace systems and platforms, supported the U.S.-Russia treaties, Open Skies and START II, and conducted routine security background investigations. Shortly thereafter, I was recruited into a special activities program with the Department of the Army. This led me to new assignments throughout Latin America and the Caribbean. As an intelligence operations officer, my responsibilities included oversight of sensitive source operations, counterinsurgency missions, and support to counter narcotics.
Lou and Jennifer moved to Denver, Colorado in late 1996 or early 1997. During this time, I suspect that Lou was stationed in Denver after boot camp, as the U.S. Army base in Denver was only a 26-minute drive from Lou and Jennifer's registered mailing address. It is unclear exactly how long the couple stayed in Denver together. In fact, they might have had to part ways for a little bit because at this point, Lou drops off the radar completely for 3 years or so, from 1997 until 2000, while Jennifer continued to maintain the address in Denver and then later an address in Miami. But it wasn't until late 1999 or early 2000 that the couple would be reunited again. This time, it was in Puerto Rico.
Guys, you are watching Who's Lou. It's a documentary by my friend here, Manny 503 of Area 503 channel. And wow, just wow, Manny. I mean, you put this video together in 2022, 3 years ago. And, you know, a lot of criticism when it first came out, a lot of attacks, you know. Again, it's a dense documentary, almost 3 hours long, and it's not, you know, fast-paced, rapid-fire information. It's real, like, deep stuff that you have to really sit on. You know, it's almost taken me 3 years just to, like, really absorb all this. But the connections that, you know, you found and the missing pieces in his story are just so interesting with what we know about all the conspiracy stuff that's going on in the U.S., you know. So right after, you mentioned right after 9/11, he's involved in all this bioterrorism, you know, virus stuff, which that's like, they must have known that the next false flag after 9/11 was going to be COVID and the whole bioweapons off that they did in 2020. Although I don't want to talk, I'll get shut off if I talk.
Well, that was during the Amerithrax stuff. So there was anthrax was being sent to Congress people and to political people and to private citizens as well during that time. And there was a real big scare, which I'm sure you remember. Like, I remember that time. We didn't know what the heck was going on. Was this another follow-up attack from Al-Qaeda? Was it, I think in the long run, it ended up coming down that it wasn't, that it was something here internally, which is even more terrifying in my opinion.
Yeah, because you look at who was targeted. It was Senator Tom Daschle's office and the other two congressmen that were calling for, a senator and a congressman that were calling for, you know, an investigation into 9/11.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and it was interesting. Like, that was used as another thing. That, like, there was a huge push in the DoD during that time to revamp our systems against bio warfare, and that's something that Elizondo got pulled into at that time. He's confirmed that there was somebody who saw him on a Jimmy Church live stream, and he's on there, and this guy's like, wait a minute, I was watching a bioterrorism thing in the early 2000s, and this guy was giving a seminar on it, and they messaged Jimmy's assistant, whatever her name is, Christina something, and asked her if she could message Elizondo and ask if that was him. Yeah, and she confirmed it with him. Elizondo says, yeah, that was me. That's what I was doing in the early 2000s. But he never talks about it. In his book, he doesn't talk about it. In his book, he's talking about how he was pulled into Iraq during that time. And I don't understand. I mean, I suppose if he was doing something with the bioterrorism then, or biowarfare, then he could have gotten pulled into Iraq. But with his college background in like immunology and other scientific stuff, he wouldn't be out on the wire kicking doors. He'd be in a lab somewhere in a clean suit. You know what I mean? Like looking at something. That's what he was probably doing. So I don't know. It's really weird, man. You can't trust anything the guy says, for one, at face value, because he's never just will tell you the sky is blue. You ask him if the sky's blue, and he'll come up with some weird ass, oh, what a great question, like it all depends on how you look and
Yeah, a lot of his Q&A was trying to run out the clock and avoid questions like mine when I went to go see him. I really wish that I had just called him out directly and said, how much longer do you think you got of this charade? Because it was March 10th that I went to see him here in Boston, and it looks like he didn't last 2 months after that.
That was like what, his third or fourth appearance where he'd done on a speaking engagement. I think by the time he'd gotten to Boston, was he still showing that CGI TR3B that he showed in the first one that was like right off of the Wikipedia page where it's like for like the Aurora or something like that, or the TR3B, and it's like that CG. It's like really bad. I couldn't believe he went there. I was like, at least get an image that people haven't seen 100 million times. He didn't just rip right off of Wikipedia, but like I think that was the first of his gaffes. Or was he showing the chandelier picture at that point in Boston? Did he show that one to you, or was that
after that? And
it was after.
He didn't show that, and I think he held back because he knows, like, Boston's an educated city, so it's even though it's just despicable what he did, because he put pictures of the TR3B in his presentation and then said, oh, we can't say that's a TR3B or say that definitively. When I called him on it and asked him about it, it's like, well, I know where the picture you used came from, and like literally know the people that made that, and you're gonna sit here and tell me we can't do that when you used it in your presentation, bro. Like, everything in his presentation was plagiarized with no source attribution whatsoever. It was just a horrible train wreck of people sitting there with me like, dude, this is like Carl Sagan's Pale Blue Dot and Cosmos mixed with the Brief History of Time and stuff that I read, learned in 7th grade science. It was really just poorly, put together information. It was just, not what you'd expect of a guy who ran the Pentagon UFO office for all these years. And the fact that they brought him in and portrayed him as this person, it's interesting, because I feel like, who's part of this? Is this big cabal of conspirators, like, all working together, or certain people? I don't tend to believe that as a more likely case is that certain people in this are projected and moved along by their own interests. So Bigelow and Harry Reid start this ATIP program. And the Pentagon's like, all right, we're going to investigate UFOs and bring all this stuff out with your tax dollars, and we're going to finally do an investigation into this. And then what the Pentagon does is bring this Lou guy in from these other operations and put him in charge of this program to create a fake, a fake office to put out to the public. What do you think? What do you think it goes on with this whole connection? Bigelow Aerospace, trying to get the UFO file, trying to get, building a facility to analyze UFO parts, getting all this, spending billions of dollars with, legitimate aerospace contractors and hiring people. I remember covering like the ads. I'm like, dude, look at the people that they're hiring at this aerospace company and the positions that they're trying to fill. Like, they're ready to get pieces of this UFO and start analyzing it and reverse engineering this stuff at Bigelow Aerospace. And they went at, teaming up with, this billionaire aerospace guy, teaming up with a senator from the state and trying to go after this UFO file thing. And then what we get is, Chris Mellon coming out of the mayor of Area 51 by his own declaration, coming out of in 2016 saying that there's nothing to this UFO program. This is all made a statement publicly about how he didn't think there was anything to it. He was going to look into it and whatnot. But then he comes out in 2017 with this group TTSA, a whole bunch of CIA guys on there with a lot of interesting backgrounds and the counterintelligence of Lou Elizondo, though that is interesting. So that all comes out in 2017. But what? And then this just blows my mind because you have no records on what you did for 3 years prior to 9/11. You have no records on those like 97 to like early 2000, and like the time windows when 9/11 researchers have established that Ace Elevator was operating in those buildings. They did the modernization inside the cores of the towers. Turner Construction was doing fireproofing upgrades on all these floors in the World Trade Center. So where is Lou during that key time period when they're prepping 9/11? Rigging these buildings with demolition explosives to the CIA-connected front company that worked as security there and also at the airliners. And then this guy thrown in the mix, what he needs to, this guy could be the key to unraveling 9/11, JFK, and UFOs all in one dude.
I honestly, I don't think so, Jeremy. Like when I first got into this, I thought Lou was like a CIA plant. I thought that he was well more connected than he is. But as I really started digging through his life from day one up until 2021, 2022, 2023, what I found on paper was that he's a bureaucrat. He was a desk jockey at the Pentagon. He's just not that important. I think he wanted to live this life of the super spy and the super soldier and all that stuff, but I just didn't see that. I saw a paper trail leading him through a life of mediocrity and boredom, which is why he jumped at the chance to come out and role play this super secret mental psychic warrior who's Gitmo's czar of torture and all that shit. If he was the guy who a lot of people think he is, I don't think I would have found anything on in the public record. I think they would have scrubbed his internet presence for one. And I don't think I would have found anything on him. They probably would have gone so far as to scrub his wife's internet presence as well and not left a footprint through their lives where you could track and find him so easily. Like one of the things I found, can you pull up on my screen real quick that I have shared there? This is an address. It's about 1.5 miles from the Pentagon. And in his book, he references it as Crystal City. This is an address that I found on a document where Elizondo, this is where he worked, by the way, folks. This is a office building offsite of the Pentagon that the government rents. It's probably secured. You probably would walk down through the lobby and there was a security guard there who would, a Pinkerton guy or a Wackenhut or a, Allied Barton or whatever, Allied whoever, guy who's like, hey, let me see your government ID. But up on the top floor there, he writes in his book about him sitting in that office all day and looking out. It's 1.5 miles from the Pentagon. He didn't have an office in the bottom of the Pentagon. He had to probably take a taxi or an Uber or a bus or whatever to go to the Pentagon. But this is Crystal City, and he does mention it in his book a couple times when we were on our way back to Crystal City. This is the building he worked in. And so I just think the guy was, I think he's a wannabe, man. I just think he's a wannabe. And I think when he got a hold of Hal Puthoff, who started telling him all these crazy freaking stories about all this stuff being true and all these wackadoo, conspiracy theories, he's decided that he's going to write them down in his books and champion them and sell it because he gets his 15 minutes of fame that's turned into almost a decade now. Here we are still dealing with this guy. It's been almost 10 years. It's crazy. It's crazy. But if you look at his book too, like you were saying earlier, Jeremy, about his presentation is all plagiarized and uncredited. His book is the same thing. His book is just like a who's who of UFO trope and stories through the years, but he says it's true because I'm telling you it's true. He doesn't tell you how it's true. He doesn't show you a document to prove it's true. He just says, I was a guy on the inside and it's true. The problem is that he wasn't. Okay, now let's roll it back a little bit. OSAP, the original OSAP, the Advanced Aerospace Weapons, special applications program that Bigelow got funded through Harry Reid, that ran up until 2009, I think it was, with funding, that did the work at Skinwalker Ranch, that came up with those 38 research papers that Hal Puthoff had written up about traversable wormholes and aneutronic nuclear fission and Stargate, and so all those papers. That was one program. And what we're finding out is that, as Jim Lukatsky has said in his public statements, most of the money that went to OSAP didn't get spent on OSAP. It was spent to skiff out and to build, like you were saying, the Bigelow facilities in Las Vegas so that they could receive this classified information from apparently Boeing, who wanted to get rid of it, or Lockheed. It was Lockheed who wanted to get rid of it, allegedly. We'll never know, because the person who they claim was going to do all that at Lockheed Martin is dead. And we can't ask him. He's gone. How convenient that the guy that they claim at Lockheed Martin was going to give them a UFO fucking parts is now dead, and we can't ask him. It's so frustrating that everywhere you go at the end of this story, it always goes back to like Elizondo or Dave Grush, but then they got all their stuff from Hal Puthoff or Eric Davis. And it's so frustrating that at the end of the day, there's really nothing to really sink your teeth into, to dive into and research, because it's just freaking stories. It's just stories. It's stories about Del Rio UFO. It's stories about Roswell. It's stories about a crash retrieval in the 1950s where we had biologics. It's all these stories at the end of the day, and that there's just no evidence. Did Lou get Benowitz by Puthoff? I don't think so. I think Lou knows that what he's peddling is. I think he knows
he's a
what he's doing.
willful grifter, and he's just going after it for the grift. And
100%. I think he's a narcissist, and I think the fact that we're even talking about him right now feeds right into his narcissistic personality. That's what I believe.
Yeah, we have to waste our time on him and not other stuff.
And not real stuff. We're talking about his crazy bullshit stories. Like somebody posted allegedly Lou gave his remote viewing manual to somebody as a gift, right? And this was his original remote viewing manual that he claims he got in like 1997 or something. And it's on pristine white paper. If anybody here has a 20-year-old document they printed on a laser printer in the early 2000s, pull it out and look at it. I've got one. I've got a screenplay I wrote in like 2001. And I pull that thing out and the paper's freaking yellow. It's bleeding out. It's all dog-eared, and it looks like it's a 20-year-old document. This thing is pristine and looks like it was printed a month ago. There's not a coffee stain on it, not a folded paper or whatever. But originally, he claims that this was his original documents with all his handwritten notes in the ledger and stuff. And it turns out that it's the old Jim Channon Psychic Samurai Men Who Stare at Goats fucking manual. It's been floating around the internet since the 1990s anyways. So it's not even a classified document. It's not even something that somebody could have found, anyways, I digress. The point being, everything that Lou Elizondo has to say is out there in the public. He doesn't have anything original, and that's why now he's resorting to pilots and, Chandelier Gate. It was some military pilot in Turkey who sent him that picture. It's not just that he found it on Reddit like I did, which is where I found it a year before he did. I saw it on Reddit and I was like, this is obviously garbage. This isn't a UFO video or photograph. That's like a reflection or something. I just dismissed it. It's not like, now he's got another pilot who's sending him a crop circle and he's like, oh, it's a pilot in a crop circle. I don't believe that. I think he's lying. But whatever. Either way,
what bothers me about the pilot and the crop circle is this guy's got to have pilot. Lots of pilots out there have seen stuff, not just Fravor and Graves, right? So those guys, I'm sure, are like reaching out to, these people that they see in these conferences and in the media and stuff. I'm sure that he's got better videos and pictures and testimony with real testimony than that. So it just makes me think that he's part of a counterintelligence op. The reasons I think this, Manny, is number one is he deliberately looks like an information scoop, like what's called a honey pot or a whistleblower trap. Basically, that whistleblowers see this stuff, think that this guy is legit, and they reach out to him with the information that they have, and boom, they're arrested. Hit with charges, hit with whistleblower, all this stuff,
or espionage,
and
right?
intercepted.
Mhm.
Because why doesn't he have better information and intelligence than that? The other thing that makes me believe that that he's not just an innocent grifter, that he's part of a coordinated, well thought out operation, is the fact that he created that Adams Project. I don't know if you remember the Atom Project. The Atom Project was basically, they called everyone who had UFO debris or metals or materials from the UFO community to all donate it and give it to this one source. And then
Right. And they were going to eminent domain that. Remember how they were trying to get that written into law so that if anything came from a UAP, it would then belong to the U.S. government. This is another document we were talking about earlier that I had found in my research that was not included in the film. This is from March 2022, and it shows that Elizondo was working as a contractor for This is CNS, okay, and that's Consolidated Nuclear Safety. They do work for the Defense Nuclear Facility Safety Board, this was a virtual briefing. So he's working as a contractor in 2022 for the Department of Energy through this company called Consolidated Nuclear Safety. And he's a weapons and safety analysis chief engineer, which is an interesting job title. I tried to find more information about, but I couldn't. It sounds like they almost made a position just to give him a job, to give him some money, because if people remember back at this time, this was before his book came out, and he really didn't have a lot of money coming in, and he was on TMZ and other places crying about how broke he was and that he's going to have to get a job at a supermarket bagging groceries and things like that. So I don't know what this job was. It sounds like maybe.
What does the CNS stand for? Is that
that's Consolidated Nuclear Safety or Security? Yeah, I think it's security.
Holy crap.
Yes, and they're a DOE contractor that does security at our nuclear facilities. So that's one of the things he was doing. Does that sound like a plant job though? Like if he was a plant, I wouldn't think that they'd be having him work this day job type thing like this. But maybe not. I mean, it sounds to me like he was using his security clearance, which he barely was able to hang on to after the AFOSI investigation into the leaks of the videos. He probably should have lost his security clearance at that point. You shouldn't just be taking sensitive materials off of JWIC servers and giving them to anyone, even if it is Christopher Mellon, and then giving them to the New York Times. Like if he was a private in the air or a airman in the Air Force that had done that, he would have been gone to jail, like the guy who was on Discord who leaked some stuff. If it was anybody else, he would have gone to prison. But the problem is that he handed those videos to Christopher Mellon, who walked him off the Pentagon property, and so they really can't prosecute Lou unless they're willing to go after Mellon. And Mellon's got some, as you say, he's got some really deep ties into the politics and the security apparatus that are out there. They're not going to go after him unless he does something extremely blatant. That's why he felt confident walking out with those videos. It's frustrating. But yeah, here he is in 2022 working for the DOE, which everyone knows the DOE, if these conspiracy theories are true about the UFOs and all that, the Department of Energy is right hip deep in all this stuff. So why is Lou working for them? Why? And this was shortly after he left to the Stars Academy.
I just think that they're sloppy, man. I don't think that they're as slick as they think. They think that they can get away with. They got away with so much of this crap in the '60s when these sources and methods and tactics were all developed, that they haven't adjusted for the new paradigm of research and internet. Blockchain and just the way that history does not go away, and this past follows you no matter what you do. The more you try to hide it and run from it, the more it will actually come back to haunt you. So I think that because you just see this time and time again with so many of these assassination plots where just things got sloppy, where they did stuff so blatantly and so out in your face, where the magic bullet. That this idea that this pristine bullet with only a tiny little dent in it fractured like 7 bones and accounted for all these multiple wounds. It's just in your face. It's like, no, and they gaslight you too, which is crazy because like you know, it's always the most in your face stuff.
And
But
that's
yeah,
the gaslighting is a classic narcissist behavior too. You know, like when somebody confronts somebody who's doing things like that, and then they gaslight you, like, you know, make you think that you're crazy and that it's in your head or you're making it up. And that's a tactic we see with this group of people. Getting back to the subject of the stream, you know, the you know, the hazing, the harassment of the critics, the doxing, you know, like you name it, man, it's all out there. And you know, for people who are unclear, like when I put this movie out, like within 72 hours of this movie coming out, the harassment was on. There was people calling my house. There was people going to somebody showed up at my mother's house here in Portland, like knocking on the door, like asking about me and stuff. That Rob Heatherly guy who was working with Tom Fessler at the time, it's really interesting. You go back and look, within 3 days of this movie coming out, Lou Elizondo is on Tom Fessler's show, and he's answering some of the questions, and they're talking about his wife, talking about, you know, his family, things like that, some of the personal questions that I'd raised in my film. And then he riles them up right on the show, and he calls them, he's like, you guys are my wolf pack, you know, you guys got to defend me. I can't defend myself, you know, like you guys need to get out there and get my back, you know. And it just hasn't stopped since then, you know. And I'm sure that was going on before that. If you go and look at like Jeremy McCowan, who came out even before this, probably 2 years before my movie came out, and tried to out these guys, and he was just viciously attacked, man. They went after his family. They dug up stuff on him. You know, the same thing goes for like John Greenwald. He had said something once and they started going after him, going after his business. Jeremy, you've experienced it. Chupacabra and Red Panda have experienced it. Lou Jimenez from the UCR. Anyone who's ever come out and said something.
He's like, you look at Lou Jimenez's mental state from the big phone home when he first got into this to where he's at now. And it's like, dude, there should be sued. They should be sued for compensation. You know what I mean? Like,
100%.
He could have had you know, he could have done a lot of other stuff with his career. You know, he wasted time on this. There's lost wages. There's lost there's so much there to like compensate for. If this was a military-run counterintelligence operation on the public, I mean, there's compensation to all the victims, like people like us. And I really want to like try to organize a class action lawsuit and see if we can get a lawyer who's willing to take on a case with this. I just want to play for you all. This is Lou's update video that he put out on May 3rd, 2 days ago, right after the conference, and everyone, you know, called him out on that UFO picture. It's just, you know, you can listen to this whole thing. It's a 7-minute video. You want to listen to the whole thing? Because I've seen people take out parts of this and put it through AI, and you know, you take the transcript and run this through an AI and see what the AI tells you about what he's saying here. Because apparently some of the AIs that some people have fed this into, Atupa was saying this earlier on an X Space with me, that if you feed what Lou Elizondo says here in his, you know, update from 2 days ago into an AI, it tells you that basically like this is a guy, you know, cleverly crafted, you know, deceptive apology for basically this guy's running a counterintelligence op, and these operations are illegal, and he knows it. It spits all this stuff out at you. Apparently, I don't know. I got to.
I'm not shocked at all. I've actually I've run some of his statements before through a large language model like ChatGPT and asked it to analyze it for any you know, authenticity, sincerity, things like that. And I've come up with similar results too, where it talks about gaslighting, victim blaming, you know, but to me, where you say disinformation, I see narcissistic behavior. You get what I'm saying? Like we're close there. Like they're real similar. The narcissist is real close to a disinformation guy. And it's probably why he's so good at his job, because he is an extremely narcissistic. I mean, look, it's all about his ego. Look at this guy, man. Look at the look on his face. Like he's sitting there with this vanity buff, you know, like, oh, he goes to the gym on bicep day and then he's got these tiny little chicken legs because he never fucking goes on leg day. You know, like it's funny, man. Like I'm just saying, like everything about this guy is his ego, him. And it's just, that's kind of where I go, you know, narcissist, not disinformation, but it's hard to tell because like you said, the tactics are the same. Gaslighting.
Let's hear from Lou himself and let the audience decide. All right.
Cool.
We can agree to disagree.
Yeah.
Let's let the audience decide and let Lou. Here's Lou.
Lou Elizondo here. I thought I'd take a few minutes and talk to you folks about a interesting week we had on Capitol Hill. For the most part, I think by and large it was very successful, but I do want to address something. During part of this forum that we had on Capitol Hill, right before we started, I was provided a photograph from a private pilot who had asked me, he was concerned that there was no real reporting mechanism. And we've known there's no real civilian reporting mechanism for private pilots to report UAP. And he took a few moments and explained to me what he saw surrounding this photograph. And so I made the command decision right there and then that I would use that photograph as an example of why we need some sort of civilian reporting system for our civilian pilots. Now that the military is taking this topic seriously, we still have this big gap between civilian aviation and military aviation. And so I made the determination right there and then to go ahead and use that photograph as an example. And looking back now that people have reacted the way they have, I just want to make it clear. I did say several times the photograph has not been vetted. And quite frankly, I did not have the time at that moment to vet it myself. But I did think it was interesting and important enough to at least use it as an example why we need civilian reporting. And unfortunately, I think that message got confused. Now, it's possible I did not communicate it effectively. And if that's the case, I accept full responsibility. But I think it's important for you all to know that the intent of that was not to say, hey, look, this is a UFO. I never said that. It was to say, look, here's an example of a photograph taken by a private pilot who doesn't know what it is. And what he described to me, I took at face value that he was telling me the truth. And I still believe that individual was telling me the truth. And I think we need to be careful when we come out and we take a photograph, again, that had already been told, had not been vetted, right? So I said, look, folks, it hasn't been vetted. I just received it that morning. There was a lot going on. I made the decision to share that. And I made that decision because I thought it would be helpful in the conversation. Clearly, looking back now, it's not. It was a distraction to everything that a lot of people, a lot of hard work by a lot of people did to put this forum on for you, the American people, you, not me. I don't need it. It's for you. And I sincerely apologize that this photograph became a distraction and became the one thing people are now talking about when there was really so much more there, really important things. We had folks like Mike Gold talking perspectives of NASA and Anna talking about business and NSF, the National Science Foundation. We had Chris Mellon and Admiral Gallaudet and all these wonderful people, Dr. Eric Davis, telling you information that I thought was very, very important, and also the members of Congress. And so once again, I hope that this does not become an unnecessary distraction. I feel that it is. And if it makes people feel better, I will accept full responsibility. But it wasn't intended to fool anybody or say, hey, look, here's a picture of a real UFO. Say, hey, here's a real photo taken by a pilot who is confused, who doesn't know where to report things, and what he actually thought he saw, he believed. And so rather than ridiculing that, I think, it'd be a lot more helpful and beneficial if we could have a conversation about it instead of a fist fight about it. We always seem to have these fist fights in the UFO community with these weird knee-jerk reactions. And I'm telling you, it's not helpful for people who want to come out and tell the truth. If they're worried about being lambasted or their photograph or their quote-unquote evidence being ripped to pieces, instead of looking at it constructively and saying, hey, look, we don't think this is, the photograph doesn't show anything anomalous. It shows X, Y, Z. That's fine. But the person who shared that photograph with me right now is very upset and very concerned. And, I hope in the future we can take a breath for a moment and try to treat each other a little bit more kindly. Okay. This is tough work. A lot of effort's been put into this. And Congress is going out on a limb and taking a big risk as well doing this. And if there are hiccups happen, guys. And I apologize. And again, I will accept full responsibility like I always do. It was not intentional. It wasn't intended to mislead anybody. It's intended to drive home a point that there.
Why would he even say that? What the intent is, and try to assure people of that? the question isn't whether you've been working hard, Mr. Elizondo. The question is who you're working for. That is the question. To quote another person, I forget who said that in Congress. It was in the movie documentary Inside Job. If anyone's wants to look that up, but very, very slime ball behavior and language, victim blaming, not taking full responsibility. Again, when I do sources, Manny, and like especially if I was going to be bringing stuff to be put before Congress, I would make sure I had a bibliography and had all that crap in order, right? That's like a big part of research, right?
Yeah, and you would bring your best evidence, not some janky video that a pilot sent to you that morning. You would bring your best evidence that you have. And here's another thing. His story it's got more holes in it than a block of Swiss cheese. Okay. One, that image was not taken out of an airplane. I think it was Charlie Weiser who found that it was pulled from a 2017 Copernicus satellite image set, public image set, that somebody had just taken a satellite image of that area, rotated a little bit, added some noise and stuff. So either one of two things has happened here. Either Elizondo found and created that and defrauded it, made the fake video or image himself and just created this whistleblower, or somebody else hoodwinked him. Either way, as the guy who allegedly ran the UFO program for the Pentagon for 10 years and is goes on TV where they put a chyron under his name that says UFO expert, he doesn't seem to be very good at identifying fake UFO videos
in
or
basic
photos.
analysis, like at all, any kind of basic analysis skills, because like the first part of any kind of like vetting is you're going to know the name of the pilot that sent this to you,
sure,
the date, location, and everything, all that information. You're going to have all that, and that's going to be that's like first order of
100%. And his claim that the pilot has no one to report it to is, I'm just going to go out here and say that's 100% false. You can go to my YouTube channel right now where there was a UFO that was sighted over Southern Oregon and Northern California. And they've got FAA controllers, air traffic controllers, multiple pilots talking on the radio about it, reporting it back and forth to each other. And it was reported to multiple agencies because the Bigfoot squadron out of Washington scrambled 2 fighters to intercept the thing. So the concept that commercial pilots don't have anything to report UFOs to is just a blatant lie. And if the people on Capitol Hill, if Burleson, Luna, Burchett, and all these people are believing that crap, they need to get their heads out of their butts and quit playing with these lunatics and get with some of the people who actually research some of this stuff. Talk to people like you, talk to people like me, talk to people who have done some research and could say, no, that's not true. There are tons of reports of these things. They call it, there's even a hotline that the one over that I was just talking about over Oregon. At the end of it, they're like, oh yeah, we need to report this to the hotline. There's a FAA hotline for it. So there's all kinds of measures in place. And that was before all of the, hoopla since Luke came out where he claimed where we didn't have any mechanisms for reporting these things. How do we get 5,000 drones over New Jersey if they don't have anything 5,000 UAP over New Jersey if they don't have anywhere to report this stuff? Like, he must either think that we're stupid or gullible or both. But either way, I'm calling bullshit.
Yeah, this is revealing. A lot of people didn't. Ashton said he hadn't even know this. That didn't even know this video existed. So I'm glad that we're playing it. This is right on Lou Elizondo's channel, by the way. You can go and check this out.
I think he put a video out the day before too, didn't he? And then this was like his retraction. Wasn't there a second video?
Oh, I'm not sure about that. You have to ask RPK and Tupa. They've been on this from day one. I learned about it today from them. So yeah, let me continue this.
Sure.
There is a pilot out there, and many of them just like him, who have nowhere to report UAP information. And that was the whole point of that photograph. And I actually took the time.
That was the whole point of that photograph. So if you take the time and do real research, especially before you bring stuff to Congress, I would have that pilot's name, all the information on him, and it would have been vetted and verified. That's like first order of UFO analysis and research, and you did none of that. Why?
Right. I would ask, where's the air traffic control recordings? We've got those from other UFO sightings where a pilot sees something and they call the air traffic control and it's reported and recorded. Why didn't this pilot do that? Because as we go to find out, this isn't a pilot. This is either somebody who intentionally, messed with him in order to either to discredit him or just to get a rise out of him. I don't know why somebody would do that, but either way, he's derelict in his duty for allowing that to happen. And for somebody who claims to be a UAP expert, it's not very encouraging. Like, the guy's a fucking joke. I'm sorry. He's just a clown. And so
the moment I received it, I made a judgment call right there. You know what? I think this is important enough to help drive the point home, whether it's a crop circle, a tennis shoe, or a real UAP. The point is that there are thousands of people out there that are in desperate need of some sort of resolution. And so I was trying to use that photograph to drive that point home. Now, obviously, if that did not get communicated, that's my fault and that's my issue. And I will absolutely own that, as I do every one of my mistakes. But let's not forget, guys, there's a lot of good stuff that was said in that meeting by a lot of people other than myself. And that's really what I think you need to take home from this. We've got a long way to go in this conversation. And again, people have been working very, very hard to do this. None of us have been paid to do this. We're doing it out of our own time, spending our own money, traveling long distances, disrupting our families to do this. And so I just ask you to please just take a breath for a moment and give people a break sometimes. Nothing is done maliciously to confuse you or try to derail disclosure. If anything, if there's one thing you should know about me, man, is I will do and just about anything for disclosure to happen. So with that said, folks, I hope we can continue to move forward, not allow this to be a major distraction. If it makes you feel better to blame me, then by all means do it. But let's not throw the baby out with the bathwater, because a lot of folks gave a lot in that meeting for you to have access to information that they didn't need to do. They didn't have to.
He's had 8 years now to produce the baby, and all we've seen is bathwater. And it's like, oh, it's coming. It's coming. I got the baby here. Nope. It's just bathwater again. How many times are you going to get fooled? And that's why I say first time is coincidence. Second time's happenstance. But the third time that's enemy action. And you can't deny it. He's trained at this, obviously.
Yeah, 100% he's trained. Yeah. And he's using his training. The question then is it an official op, or is this his own rogue op? Like at that point.
Do it. I certainly didn't have to do it, nor did anybody else. So with that said, I just hope that, if you want to get mad at anybody, makes you feel better, get mad at me. But a lot happened. And I think it was a rather very, very important forum. And I hope you would agree that forums like that in the future need to happen for greater transparency. Now, it's also, very, very possible we could have turned around and just recorded everything and not live streamed it and go ahead and edit it later, and you would never know. But part of transparency is being truthful and honest with everybody and letting people see for everything as it is. So I made a call to go ahead and show that photograph because I thought it was important enough that it would help drive home the point that we need a reporting mechanism for our civilian pilots. If I fail to achieve that, I sincerely apologize, and that is my responsibility.
Okay, so
and only my responsibility. So with that said, I hope you all have.
Okay, so he didn't take responsibility for what he didn't really take full responsibility for what actually happened here today. He really just danced around blah blah blah. This is other stuff. We had some good stuff in those hearings, with these guys, but no, come on, man.
He apologizes for making a mistake in a weird way, but he doesn't actually admit to making a mistake. You notice it's like there's some weird psychology going on, and I would encourage people to grab a transcript of this and run it through ChatGPT and ask it about the psychological intent of the person who's speaking here. Because as someone like myself, I've seen so much of him speaking, so this is all just second nature to me. But it's hard for me to really articulate it sometimes.
Yeah, but explain to the GPT like what he just did, like that he is supposedly the head counterintelligence guy. I mean, the head UFO guy at the Pentagon. And that he brought this crap to the hearing that wasn't researched. Like why would he do that? And why would he then issue this apology and not really blame the pilot, blame his source that he still can't name, and all that stuff. Like, think about it. Just think about it. Anyways, Jedi is a new member. Thank you for the membership. We very much appreciate that. Got some good interviews coming out soon that are going to drop here. That from Jesse Michaels is still editing down my interview with him, and I want to hear different people's perspectives, because I hear some people's perspectives, and I tend to go with this perspective that there's. I think very conspiratorially about things, because it just is just my my bias on a lot of this stuff. So I admit that I get like a little overly conspiratorial sometimes, but is he an independent agent, just trying to grift for make UFO grift, and really just doesn't know and really just doesn't have the good knowledge and discernment to really deal with the subject appropriately, to tell the fakes from the real information? Is that the case? Or is he a deliberate, counterintelligence plant that's applying, these skill sets to the UFO community? That's the subject of debate for the audience. And you know what? I'm gonna post a poll for everyone watching live.
Yeah, I'm curious to see what everybody else thinks, for sure.
Yeah.
And I used a term the other day when I was talking about this, Jeremy. I said, in any kind of conspiracy, there's obviously most of the time, there's like a head honcho calling everything, right? Who's making the plays, and everyone else is kind of, there's like a hierarchy, right? But in this case, I feel like it's almost like, it's worse than like the lunatics running the asylum. Like literally nobody's running the asylum. Like at some point you got Elizondo doing his own rogue thing. Other times it's Dave Grush doing his own rogue thing. Gary Nolan's out there sucking up to anyone he thinks will give him $1 to research this stuff, and then you got Jeremy Corbell and George Knapp doing God knows what, and in any given day, even though they're all part of the same group of people, and it seems like they're working towards an agenda, they're all kind of in it for their own little bit, whether it's ego, money, fame, funding, whatever, so it's so hard to nail down, what is going on and what this group's agenda is, because it changes every day depending on who's kind of the leader of the group that day. Yeah, it'd almost be better if there was like, if Mellon was just running it, or even if just Lou was running it. At least then you could try to figure it out. But when it's so chaotic, you're never gonna ever find out what's really going on. Let's see what the audience thinks, though. Did you get that poll up?
Yeah, I got the poll up. It's running right now. I'm gonna we're gonna get back to your Who's Lou documentary here in a second. I'll continue playing that, because that's excellent. We did a good detour, though, with a lot of good information we've covered in the last hour or
Yeah,
so.
and I wish we could talk more about the harassment stuff and the RICO and all that. Like, because I think honestly,
I was hoping that Tupa and Red Panda would jump on this stream. I invited them both, but I haven't seen them.
There's a lot of other people too, like there's a ton of you'd be surprised. Like when you really start digging into it, like anyone who's really stepped up, and some of them have gotten run off and some of them are still around. Like remember Josh and Artemis, they got run off because of this stuff, because of Lou, like there's a lot of some of these people were really good people, and they don't deserve it.
Well,
like
the thing is, right, we've got the intelligence together in this community now, and getting smart people together to apply their skill sets to this is the best idea ever. And I want to give a shout out to Deep Prasad and Jesse Michaels and everyone who was there at the UAP hackathon and put the UAP hackathon together that I attended 2 weeks ago. This is Peter Skafish, who's there with his $5,000 cowboy boots, and just looking very elitist. The Soul was criticized for having a $25,000 membership tier, donation tier on their website, just trying to cater to very deep-pocketed clientele. And people criticize them as like, why are you guys an authority or a go-to source on this information and not other people? And so, I got to kind of meet Peter and get a sense of him, and he's got a very elite mentality, and the idea that he knows people and he knows stuff that nobody else knows, and that but I tripped him up on a few things that got him really questioning things. which was interesting to see.
Well, and don't they all claim that? Like, oh, like even Mr. Danny Sheehan there, he's been doing the same thing for years. I'm on the inside and I can't tell you what I know, but I can drip you breadcrumbs, like and 9 times out of 10, it's just complete and utter garbage, at least with Danny, like, I don't know about Peter.
Yeah, he's weird because like he told different stories to me than he was telling to some of these other people. I would catch him in these conversations just telling these well rehearsed, like he knows the stories and he tells them so like eloquently. He's a good storyteller and that kind of a person, but like he's interesting because I did get to ask him off camera about Lou Elizondo. I did not record that question, but he was basically portraying the whole thing as like, oh, Stephen Greer, used some of my, the comments in that documentary to really portray, a different message. I don't believe that now. I don't think that. And his defense of Lou is pretty well thought out and put together, but I don't know how much. I wanted to ask him, how much did Lou pay you? Like, did you actually get to like, did the Paradigm Institute really need the money that badly that they
I don't think they paid him cash. I think he gave him insider access. I think that was more valuable to a guy like Danny, bringing him in on the inside of this whole new disclosure thing and giving him access to all those people that are on stage, Gary Nolan, Christopher Mellon, the inner workings of this group of people, this conspiracy that's running this disclosure movement. I think that would be more valuable to Danny Sheehan than actual money, but
Yeah.
I don't know. They may have given him both. It might've been access and money. Who knows? But Danny jumped ship right after that documentary of Dr. Greer's came out. He left the disclosure group that Dr. Greer had been running since 2001, and then became Lou Elizondo's one of Lou Elizondo's attorneys at that point. And Dan Sheehan's an interesting one because about a month after Who's Lou came out, I was working with a journalist named Art Levine on his article that he wrote, and one of the things that he had asked is if anyone had contacted Elizondo to let him know about all the doxing, the harassment, the attacks by these fans and stuff. And so what he asked was that I write a letter to Danny Sheehan and explain all that to him, which I did. I sent it all to Danny Sheehan back in 3 years ago about all this stuff. Of course he's watching, and if he's not, he's got somebody else watching who's going to take notes. There's all these little minions that work for him that do it for
they're in the space today. They jumped into space and tried to jump in and defend him and say that we have is theories and we don't have evidence. And I was like, no, bro, this is like, and then we had so many people jump on and he's like this. And then we had Eric Hecker jump on. He's like, I don't know who you are and I don't care. The troll was saying, and Eric's like, dude, I'm like one of the guys that testified to Arrow. I'm like one of the Arrow whistleblowers. And I was like, this dude was on Sean Ryan and like a bunch of big part, like of the top 3 whistleblowers that testified to Arrow. And we had a great conversation talking about how the mismanagement of Arrow and how that was a DOE Battelle shit show from the get-go. Arrow being managed by Ronald Moultrie, who's, Kirkpatrick reports to Moultrie. Moultrie hid his Battelle connections and his Battelle background to Battelle Memorial Institute, which is, directly tied to all this, like the metallurgy side of Project Stork and all the project, the hidden end of Project Blue Book that was run by this secretive group run by Howard Cross and some of these other guys were involved, like Lloyd Berkner. And other characters that come up in other situations and stuff. But this was a cool opportunity to me. I wish I had more chance to sit down one-on-one with Danny and really get into the nuts and bolts stuff. But he's an interesting guy to talk to, and he's been through a lot of different stuff. But
real quick, just to finish my story about that, as he was the attorney for Elizondo, I had put together a very concise letter about all of the harassment that I'd been receiving after Who's Lou came out. And I sent it to Dan Sheehan and I asked him to contact his client and ask him to put an end to it, or that maybe Danny should distance himself from a client who embraces such sordid behavior. And Danny ignored me. He just completely ignored me. He didn't even bother to respond and say, oh my God, I can't believe, I'm sorry you're going through that. I'll talk to my client. I wasn't aware. He just completely ignored it. He doesn't. So at that point, I really didn't want anything to do with Danny Sheehan. He kind of burned a bridge with me on a personal level.
I have his card right here. I got his card. on the conference. So I might reach out to him at some point, and I'm, I don't know. I seems like I like to keep an open mind about some of these people and stuff, but I've been watching a lot of podcasts. I did a JFK deep dive, and now that these files have come out, I don't know if you've been keeping up with the JFK stuff, but there's this podcast called America's Untold Stories, which this guy Mark Grobert, I binge watched every single episode in like the last month, just diving into all the JFK stuff really heavily. Mark Grobert, he knows a lot about the subject, and he brings a lot of like key experts on that debunks. Like I watched this documentary with Jay Widener on JFK it was on TV. And this guy's just lying his ass off about this, trying to discredit the Zapruder film and say it was cut and spliced by time. And then Robert Groden got on a podcast here, and they just totally debunked this whole documentary, which is what you watch if you look up JFK on your TV and try to find information on it. You'll get this propaganda that tries to like come in at this conspiracy angle, like, oh, we're exposing this stuff, but it focuses only on the mafia. At the beginning of this film, and then it really just tried to discredit the Zapruder film. But they go through a lot of the nitty gritty, nuts and bolts details that real researchers like you and me like to go through and get into. And when he had Mark Grobert on there, Mark Grobert had Robert Groden on the show. He found the research that debunked this idea that the Zapruder film was altered, and of course the Zapruder film is the best piece of evidence we have in the JFK case.
Right. The film doesn't lie. It is what it is. It shows what it shows, and people can interpret it however they want. But as far as that day goes, there's nothing else out there. What do we really have other than testimony? Like it's
right.
Insane. And there is actually a documentary. I forget the name of it. It might even just be called Parkland, that talks with a bunch of the doctors that worked on his body that day. And that is, in my opinion, one of the more revelatory recent documentaries to come out.
Yeah, that's Robert Groden, man. He's a beast at the research, and he put that together. He actually went through and found all the witnesses and interviewed them, and he's the one that put that compilation of like literally like 50 people, all with like the exit wound in the back of the head. And
right. Yeah. The entry and the exit, a massive wound in there. Like, how did that, there's your magic bullet, like that has not nary a scratch on it, goes through all these. Yeah. It's just insane, man. This is a good one to get into. I prefer to talk about stuff like this than clown shoes Elizondo, to be honest with you.
Well, here's a sneak peek behind the scenes. This is me sitting down with Jesse Michaels on the aircraft carrier doing this interview that still hasn't been put out yet, but it's coming any day now. And I just want to clarify a couple things if that drops and to talk about, because I call out Jeremy Corbell and Elizondo for what I think are plants in the hearings to derail the conversation and stuff. But I also, I don't know, what do you feel about Michael Schellenberger? Because I've gotten mixed opinions on how people feel about Michael. He's done some, decently, good things, but he hasn't returned it. I've written him 100 emails during the whole hearings that he was at, and I didn't get a single response back from him. I was sending him all kinds of stuff and just, I don't know if he blocked me or thought I was crazy or they didn't get through, but he didn't respond.
He may have been told not to talk to you. Remember, there's a blacklist out there of anyone who's critical of this group of people. And your name's definitely on that list, as is mine and some other people who we're talking about today. But once your name goes on that list, as soon as somebody's brought into the fold, they're told not to speak to you about anything. You're shunned. It's worse than being kicked out of the Church of Scientology. You're fair game, bro. So he may have been told not to speak to you. I can't say for sure. My personal opinion on Schellenberger is that he's more of I think he was misled. I think he was probably manipulated and misled. I don't think he's a willing participant in any of this stuff. And he's got, if you look into his national security stuff, like his background before he got into the UAP stuff, he's got a really good track record. He was probably turned off by the UAP.
Yeah, well, I think we the whole community's kind of turned him away, and I don't think that we need him anyway. I don't know what he was actually doing in the UFO field, which makes me more suspicious that he is an agent, because I was binge watching I was been watching American Untold Stories with Mark Grobert, and in one of the episodes, Mark's asked about Schellenberger, and Mark, thinks that Schellenberger's deep state, and he says that Schellenberger's father worked for the CIA, and that he's like a CIA child, one of these media CIA media children, and which I think is an interesting angle to probe. And I couldn't find much on it other than his parents were Mennonites, and the Mennonite Church, which Ruth Payne, as we've come out that Oswald's CIA handler, his landlady, was a Mennonite CIA agent. With direct connections to Alan Dulles, like direct pipeline to Alan Dulles' mistress. Really interesting connections there. But I didn't get a chance to deeply probe into this Michael Schellenberger thing. But
it says there he's a professor at the University of Austin, and isn't that where Hal Puthoff has his Earth Tech International connections?
Yeah, there are some interesting, connections about him and his background and stuff. And when Mark says something, I don't know. He also says that Danny Sheehan is deep state as well, which I thought was interesting because Danny Sheehan I've always thought was like on the